Now to accountability, in order to address this just for a moment, I think you have to define it. And to me, accountability is a willingness to be held to account for something. In education, it begs two immediate questions. Who's going to be held to account, and to whom, for what? And I would offer that in education, we have always had at least one small bit of accountability. If you think about it, the education system, at least overtly, is willing to be held to account for child safety. Now, not perfectly, but if a child is injured in some way in a school, the system will react to that. In fact, there's rumors that teachers have even been disciplined over incidents where children were injured in some way. The system takes that pretty seriously. What it doesn't take seriously, and what it's not willing to be held to account for, is student achievement. What we have confused it with, and Paul did a brilliant job of explaining this, I'll make it muddier. What we have confused is the Education Quality and Accountability Office, the EQAO. I'm not sure what government named that office or who was the minister. In any event, it's oxymoronic because EQAO is not an accountability system, it's a measuring system. And you can argue whether it's a good or a bad measuring system, but it's an independent measuring system. What we do with that measurement is up to us. And frankly, we don't do much with it. It's akin to wanting to lose weight and buying a brand new fancy bathroom scale. It's not going to help you lose weight. It's just going to measure what happens. If you want an example of how ineffective the EQAO is at driving accountability, look no further than JKSK. Because nowhere in the adoption of that system is there a measurement of its actual impact on students. I mean, we have the ability. I read a brilliant column on this in the Sunday Sun a few months ago. It was actually my column. And if we were serious about this, we would try the different modalities available. We would take students who hadn't had JK, all-day JK. We would take fully certified teacher programs. We would take non-fully certified teacher programs. And we would test a few of those and run the student achievement numbers up in grade 3 and find out what happened. But we're not doing that. We're not doing that because we don't want to know. So EQAO is not used. I'd like to offer just for a moment a friend of mine, an example of a friend of mine. And again, this is consistent with what Paul and Andrea have said. My young friend's name is Kyle. He's 19. He's in his third year of grade 12. Victory lap. And Kyle will be getting his diploma this year based entirely on co-op credits. You can do that in Ontario. You can get a high school diploma now that doesn't allow you to do anything. I'm thinking about going back and just applying for mine. Now, Kyle, the reason I bring him up is Kyle is a very bright young man. He is, by his own admission, lazy, and he hates school. It's kind of why I like Kyle. He is, though, very, very bright. Who is accountable for Kyle leaving some, 14 years of public education with a meaningless diploma? Who's willing to be held to account for that? If you ask inside the system, you'll find out that what Kyle has is, quote unquote, bad parents. Trust me, if you drive that question, that will be the answer. The public education system exists so as to provide the opportunity for every young person to acquire the skills, knowledge, habits, and disciplines necessary to pursue their life goals. By that measure, we have failed Kyle. And no one, from the minister to the teacher in the classroom, is willing to be held to account for that failure of the public system. I know we've already talked about the number of young adults in our system who, after 11 years of education, can't pass a basic literacy test. That number is stubbornly around 30%, depending on how many students get lost from the testing pool, exempted from the testing pool, or simply just don't show up. But based on who the system allows into the pool, about 30% can't pass a basic literacy test. Who's accountable for those kids? If we allow for the answer to those questions to be the parents, now I'm not an expert on parenting. As a matter of fact, I'm not an expert on much. But if it's parents, if that's the answer, then why have a public education system? You know, if parents are ultimately accountable for the academic achievement of their kids, why not just give them control of the system and hand them vouchers? Now, frankly, I think that there is a role for public education. I think we should not accept that no one is willing to be held to account for the academic achievement of students, for young people acquiring the skills, knowledge, habits, and disciplines they need to pursue their life goals. But if that is the case, then the parents should be given control of that system. Why have an EQAO if it doesn't drive education policy? Why bother? I agree with you that it's a ridiculously small investment. But if we're not going to use those measurements, in fact, if we're going to convolute the results, why bother having it at all? Is the public education system accountable? Yeah. For student safety. No. For anything else that matters, not to parents, not to students, and certainly not to taxpayers.